All righty, good afternoon. We're going to go ahead and get started. Maybe a few other folks will filter in. For those of you that I don't know, my name is Rod Cox. I'm with the Commanding General Staff College Foundation. Welcome. It's my pleasure on behalf of our partners, the Commanding General Staff School, Colonel Scott Green and Mr. Marv Nichols, to welcome you here to this InterAgency Brown-Bag Lecture Series presentation. This will be our 8th in this year, academic year series. And I want to give a thank you to our sponsors for the event, who we couldn't do this without, the First Command Financial Planning. We appreciate. Thanks, folks. And you might be wondering, if you're new to the series or haven't been here, you see the white bags here. If you want to sign up in advance with the First Command people, see one of the folks that are here, raise your hands, please. Talk to one of them. You can sign up for a free lunch for the next brown bag, and they'll be happy to do it. So there actually is a free lunch in this case. But of course, everything comes with a caveat, because there's a little thing in the news happening around the world about this impact of the virus. Obviously, my partners with the Commanding General Staff School, and we're sitting here obviously in this very nice facility. So our next scheduled presentation is scheduled to be 6 April, where we'll talk about cyberspace ethics. But for now, that's on hold. And so I'll put out, normally, if those of you should see my announcements a couple days before, we put out whether or not we're going to continue to have that event. But for right now, I'll just alert you to the date. It is scheduled 6 April, cyberspace ethics. But right now, the guidance is being issued that that'll be on hold. And that has to do with factors of inside, outside audiences here in the building. More to follow on that. But regardless of that, we will continue on. We'll have another presentation scheduled in May. And then we'll see what we're doing there. And if you want to talk to one of the First Command folks, please do so. All right, today's presentation is going to be recorded for use by a distributed learning station, students, as well as our DDE people, as well as the interagency practitioners who reference and go to the Assignment Center website to follow this series. And what that means to you folks that are sitting around the back of the room, if you have a question or you want to engage in dialogue, I would encourage you, either you can move up to the tables in the vicinity of the microphones, or if you do have a question you want to engage, is either move up there so it's loud enough and speaker. One point about that is there's nothing, you don't need to do anything. If you're sitting there and you want to talk, the microphones are already on. Just start talking. The man in the control booth will pick it up. You don't need to push the buttons and turn them on and off, because that'll just mess things up. Just talk and he'll pick you up here or there. But we are recording for that in case. And your question is important. The dialogue you engage is important, so we'd like to capture that on tape for the folks that will watch this later. Okay. Today's presentation, United States Agency for International Development, USAID, USAID, however you might be familiar with it. They're the world's premier international development agency and a catalytic actor driving development results. USAID's work advances U.S. national security and economic prosperity, and demonstrates American generosity and promotes a path to recipient self-reliance and resilience. That's straight off their website. I'll also tell you a little bit about their mission statement. On behalf of the American people, USAID promotes and demonstrates democratic values abroad, advances a free, peaceful, and prosperous world. In support of America's foreign policy, something to note, the U.S. Agency for International Development leads the U.S. government's international development and disaster assistance through partnerships and investments that save lives, reduce poverty, strengthen democratic governance, and help people emerge from humanitarian crisis and progress beyond the assistance. Today's discussion is going to focus on a little bit of general about the agency, but mostly on the agency's role in combating malign Kremlin influence and predatory Chinese lending practices around the world. So pretty interesting topic. And we're very fortunate to have with us here an expert in these areas to talk about it, Stephanie Chetraru, USAID's representative to the Commanding General Staff College, where she holds the title as the Distinguished Chair for Development Studies, is a senior commissioned foreign service officer with the agency. During her 16-year career with USAID, she served at embassies in El Salvador, Israel, Pakistan, Russia, and Moldova. Prior to her USAID service, she was a Peace Corps volunteer in Honduras, a consultant for the think tank Inter-America Dialogue, and a Community Liaison Officer for Glamis Gold in Honduras. She's a graduate of James Madison University and Illinois State University, where she took her master's, and she's currently pursuing a Ph.D. in Security Studies at Kansas State University. Please welcome our USAID rep. Stephanie.
So I'm going to walk around a little, but mainly hide behind the podium as well. So well, today we're going to talk about Russian malign influence and predatory Chinese lending practices. I would be remiss as a USAID officer not to start off with our bread and butter video of the kind of work we do. So if we could cue up the video. We won't watch the whole thing, but just so you get an idea. This video? Here we go. Thanks, Riley.
Our most basic common link is that we all inhabit this small planet. We all cherish our children's futures, and we are all mortal.
Today, we seek to move beyond the accomplishments of the past, to establish the principle that all the people are entitled to a decent way of life.
Let us not forget that each child saved, each refugee housed, each disease prevented, each barrier to justice brought down, each sword turned into a plowshare brings us closer to peace, closer to freedom, closer to dignity.
America is a nation with a mission. And that mission comes from our most basic beliefs. Our aim is a democratic peace. A peace founded upon the dignity and rights of every man and woman.
We also know that progress in the most impoverished parts of our world enriches us all.
That's good.
So the United States will join with our allies.
So I just wanted to show you a quick snippet of our bread and butter work, and wanted to kind of ask the audience what you know about USAID. If you've had an interaction with USAID, you could just kind of shout it out.
So I came here from the staff at US Africa Command, so I worked in the J4,
Okay.
and actually worked pretty closely with the USAID rep there in establishing some of the local procurement policies to align with some of the initiatives that USAID had in Africa.
Great.
So that local procurement would actually feed some of the education and training programs that USAID was developing.
Great. Anybody else? What comes to mind when you think of USAID, an agency like USAID? What comes to mind? Disaster, development.
Pandemic responses like Ebola in West Africa.
Yeah, and currently coronavirus. Although right now it's more about making sure our people are quarantined overseas, but anything else about the culture maybe of USAID?
Like subcontractors.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a lot of that, yeah. So officers like me would kind of write up a contract for then a whole NGO or corporation to then carry out in the field. Yeah, very good. Okay. So I just wanted to show you that kind of stuff before we shift into a more granular view of what we're headed towards as an agency. So Rod already listed we're an independent federal agency, and we operate under the guidance of the U.S. Secretary of State. We don't have a cabinet level secretary, so we need to follow foreign policy as set by the administration and the Secretary of State. But we are an independent federal agency, and we are the lead on foreign assistance. And we operate in over 100 countries. And so our core group of officers, we're about not quite 2,000 commissioned officers that serve at our embassies overseas, and I normally do that, but then we detail people out here every few years. And then we have a small, about 1,500 civil service staff back in DC. And the majority of our workforce, about 5,000 people, are actually local nationals in each country we work in. Back up. Okay, what do we do? So here's where I want to start breaking it down a little. We are involved in U.S. national security. I was waiting to hear someone kind of shout out that we're do-gooders or something like that, to show you that our main mission falls under national security. We're out there to advance U.S. national security, first and foremost. So sometimes you might be surprised if you approach us in the field and you want us to do something for the local orphanage, like USAID. You must want to help the poor orphans. And we say, well, it's not really in a strategic area for U.S. interest. And sometimes we end up looking like the most cold-hearted people at the embassy, because sometimes we have to turn down those really nice projects because we need to do other things that are a priority for U.S. national interest overseas. Okay, so what I'm going to focus on today is the national security, economic prosperity, and path to self-resilience today. Why are those important for U.S. taxpayer money? Why? Why is it important that we're spending U.S. taxpayer money, which is not a lot, by the way? Let's say out of $1 trillion 2020 federal discretionary budget, USAID has about a $16 billion chunk of that, or let's take it down to about maybe $12 billion, because the rest is at State Department and other agencies. And it's less than 0.5% of the federal budget. But anyways, that's still money. So why are we spending U.S. taxpayer money on helping other countries with their economic prosperity and their resilience?
Or to prevent war than to fight it.
Yeah?
Create allies.
Allies. Cheaper to prevent war than have a war. Anything else? Okay. Yep. Help when you can. Okay. All right. I still haven't learned where to point this. Okay. All right. So I wanted to then delve into what we recently went through at UCOM. We did a whole government exercise for perspectives on countering Russia. Okay. This is how USAID fits into the interagency picture and why we have people like me here, or why we have representatives at UCOM and AFRICOM. Okay, the defense objectives from the 2018 National Defense Strategy includes enabling U.S. interagency counterparts to advance U.S. influence and national security interests. Okay, here's where I'll probably hide behind the desk. All right. Okay. So our main goal is if we leave Russian aggression and Chinese aggression unchecked, this could erode our U.S. military advantage. Okay, so we want to deter this aggression and coercion in key strategic regions where we can. Okay, because China and Russia aim to shift the regional balances of power. We all know that. Okay. And the defense strategy also states that Department of Defense is going to assist efforts of the U.S. Department of State, Treasury, Justice, Energy, USAID, et cetera, to identify and build partnerships to address areas of economic, technological, and informational vulnerabilities to better enable diplomatic, international, and economic elements of power. Okay, so USAID, USAID. Now, with this administration, we're coming to a really great era of being a development professional. Development professionals, we want to build capacity in the countries we work in so we don't have to keep going back. You know, even though we're an officer corps, part of an American bureaucracy, we want nothing more than to work ourselves out of a job, much like you guys do. You probably want nothing more than to work yourselves out of a job, right? We both work in fields where, less war the better, the less poverty the better, right? So USAID, with this administration, we're talking a lot more about self-reliance, the country's commitment and capacity to plan, finance, and implement their own solutions to solve their development challenges. We're not going to be hanging around these countries for decades to come, right? Because truly, you want to be able to walk away at some point because they can handle it, right? And that makes them stronger allies to help us with our interests. That makes them stronger and able to withstand Chinese or Russian influence. Okay. If you want more information on this exciting new chapter that USAID is going into, there's a link there, and I can show it to you after the presentation as well. Okay, so great power competition. Our approach: rule of law and international standards, private enterprise and innovation, empowering women. You'll see the authoritarian approach, or Chinese approach, tools for military ambitions, predatory lending as assistance, and they want to tie up strategic assets by doing that. Okay. Okay. So there are two competing models of development and relief in the world. Okay, there's the authoritarian approach, and it's really predatory lending dressed up as assistance. You know, they'll go into Pakistan and say, we'll build up your port in Karachi. But what they're doing is the governments in these countries are taking out huge loans that who knows if they're ever going to be able to pay them back. But perhaps when the Chinese need to call in a favor, they'll also be calling in that loan, right? And the government officials who signed those loans 10 years ago, are they going to be paying that back? No, it's the people in that country and in their social safety net that'll be paying the high price, and it's going to keep them in a cycle of poverty. So they get these countries into unsustainable debt. They also don't do business like we do business. They are, when they do these loans and do these contracts for these big projects, corruption, payoffs, kickbacks, and straight-out bribery is often involved and explicit, whereas that's not how we operate, okay? We would go to jail if we did something like that as U.S. government officials, or the corporations and NGOs we deal with. Okay, and when we go into a country and say, hey, we want to help you with your IT market. You know, we see you have a lot of disenfranchised youth here, but we see that they're very technologically savvy. Let's see if we can promote this as a market for jobs. Because we want your economy to thrive. We don't want your youth to be disenfranchised and start joining these extremist groups. When China goes in and says, hey, we want to help you with this, what they're really looking to do is to harvest that innovation and technology that comes out of that project for their own use. So while we build inclusive development based on rule of law, you know, following the law, not taking bribes, not giving bribes, they do not. And so let's be honest. These two competing approaches, which one is tougher for these countries? Which approach is tougher? Is it tougher to take a $10 billion loan to jumpstart some economic infrastructure project next week? Or is it tougher to clean out your courts, get out the corrupt judges so that real businesses want to come in and invest in your country because they feel comfortable they can settle disputes, make sure that you're not abusing your citizens, harassing your citizens, you're giving them freedom of speech. Which is the easier road for some of these governments that might be struggling? The first one. So we're up against a pretty tough enemy. So out in the field, USAID just tries to really lay bare in honest terms, yeah, so if you want this aid from us, you gotta cut out the shenanigans. And we have trackers, there's monitoring of how corrupt governments are. We know nobody has zero corruption. So there's a scale. If you go beyond a certain scale, we say, whoa, okay, we're not gonna program in that area anymore. Through a transparent means. It would be the administration's decision backed up by the Secretary of State. And then again, we take our policy guidance from the Secretary of State. So, but the Chinese, they say, they use kind of a philosophy of relativity. Like, we don't want to tell you what to do in your own country. We believe, and they couch it as, we don't want to control you. You do what you want to do in your own country. We're not going to control you like the United States. So it's all in how you dress it up. Okay, so the countering Kremlin influence. The policies and programs that build resilience and detect and respond external interference. And again, this is coming out of UConn. And working with government and non-government actors in the countries that are targets. So UConn is heavily involved in this. And okay, let's see, when did this start? 2018. Okay, I've been working on countering Kremlin influence since at least 2012. I was part of one of the first groups that got kicked out of Russia. All of our local staff are legally branded foreign agents in their own country for working for us. So this has been coming for a while, right? I think the only surprise to us working out in the near abroad of Russia during that time period, our only surprise was we were so focused on what was going on in Russia's near abroad, and our work is in those countries. We don't do domestic work. We don't do aid in the United States. That's not us. We can't believe we missed it going on here too, right? We've all heard about disinformation campaigns going on in the U.S. as well from various countries around the world. So, while we're out trying to help these countries, it was going on in our own backyard. I think that's the last slide. Okay, so now that's coming from UConn. So that's to set the stage of why we work together on this, okay? Now USAID, again, I've been doing this since at least 2012, but we have an Eastern European bureau that's been in Eastern Europe for, since 1991, right? 1990. So we have been tracking trends since then to give a picture, and that's why we were able to do this kind of programming way back in 2012 and 2013 is we don't wait for things to show up on the news, right? We have technical experts that are hired to research these kind of issues that may arise, plan properly, and have a program rolled out to be able to deal with it to help our allies, right? So we've been tracking this data since 1991. And here we see economic growth in China has far outpaced growth in the economies of Russia, the US, and the EU. Okay. In 2000, China's economy was about 1/3 the size of the EU. By 2017, it was larger than either of the EU and the US economies, and almost 6 times larger than the Russian economy. Now, I want to point out, people often don't take Russia seriously as an adversary. They say, oh, it's a, country on the brink of extinction or what have you. They use different terms, right? They're a weak country, their economy's not like ours. However, there's a very salient point here. As small as their economy is, it's very large relative to their neighbors, okay? It's 100 times larger than the Georgian economy. Think about that. Georgians are super entrepreneurial and innovative. Okay, they have a pretty good economy. Russia's economy is 100 times larger than that. So what does that mean? What does that mean for Georgia, Armenia, Moldova, Ukraine? What does that mean for those countries if that's your main trading partner? Yeah, they have the leverage, and they use it. They can bully you. They can use it. Okay, so just really quickly, I'm not going to go through all these slides, but you can see the growth. We talked about this. Okay, now here, zeroing in on that Russia question. Okay, so this is their neighborhood. So you can see they'd be pretty beholden to that big neighbor next door. And so what do we want to do? What do we want to do as the United States government? If they're beholden economically to Russia, what do you think USAID does over in these countries? Do you think we build girls' schools? Do you think we help orphans? Do you think we deliver food aid? What do you think we do if this is one of the biggest problems they're dealing with? Strengthen their business sectors, okay? And that goes back to rule of law. You know, democracy can sometimes be a fluffy topic. However, if you don't have courts that function where foreign direct investors can mediate disputes and so on and so forth, you're not going to have a thriving economy, okay? You're not going to have a competitive economy. So we do a lot of work, for example, in Moldova. They were the Soviet Union's wine producer. When they collapsed, their main importer of their wine became Russia. Okay, you could just dump it at the border. They pay in cash. No customs papers needed, nothing. It took them a while to jump into other markets because it was too expensive. You have to buy new equipment. You have to bring up the quality of the wine. You know, they're a very poor country. They don't want to do that. They couldn't afford to do it. But again, Russia has this economic leverage. So when Ukraine and Moldova in 2012 and 2013 wanted to join like the EU neighborhood, it was a pact with the EU, Russia hit back very hard. They invaded Ukraine, and they slammed Moldova with, they banned all of their wine exports. That could have crippled the Moldovan economy, right? Because that is their main export, and their main market was Russia. However, again, USAID, we're not sitting back waiting to hear about Russia bullying people on the news, right? 10, 15 years ago, we saw this is a vulnerability. You need to reorient to European markets. So we have been working with them, and that's why sometimes it may seem like, what are you guys doing out there? You know, you're working in vineyards, like, what, really? What a nice job. Or, you know, where are the results? We don't see any results. You're wasting taxpayer money. But development, cultural change, mentality change, it takes time and it takes work. So we had agricultural experts working with the wine market in Moldova for probably over 10 years. And when Russia invaded Ukraine and when they banned Moldovan wine, they woke up. And they said, okay, we're ready. What do we need to do? We're ready. What do we need to do? And so we, got them on the next flight to wine shows all over the world, literally. And they, within a couple years of that, they moved away from Russia being their primary importer of wine to the EU being the primary importer of Moldovan wine. And just so you know, we have laws, Congress makes sure that we're not impeding Napa Valley sales, okay? We're not, Moldovans aren't gonna import into here with any US government funds, okay? They can do it on their own, but not on our dime, okay? Because we don't wanna interfere with Napa Valley's wine production or Charlottesville wine production or what have you, right? So, it's sometimes can be boring work that you have to slog through for 10 years. But then something political is going to happen in a country. There's going to be an open window that happens, and people are going to get it, saying, okay, they just invaded our neighbor Ukraine, and they just cut off my family's source of income for the entire year. Maybe I need to take a loan and get with the program and increase the quality of my wine, improve the quality of my wine. I really want to leave time for questions. Okay. So, like I said, the trade ties in Eastern Europe have weakened. The trade ties in Eastern Europe have weakened significantly with Russia over the past few decades. However, Armenia, Belarus, and Georgia are still doing a lot of trade with them. And then gas. Of course, everyone's dependent on them for gas. So what do you think USAID does in that area? Not a whole lot, unfortunately, but what do we try to do? If they're totally dependent on them for Russian gas.
Energy independence.
Yeah. We try to support that. And I will say it's difficult because much of Europe actually depends on Russia as well, specifically Germany. So a lot of work we do out in the field, I wish our State Department guy was here, we like to go in sometimes as a team and talk to these countries about, what is the benefit of working with us? And a lot of times in Eastern Europe, we go in with the EU and say, hey, we can help you out here. We can get you out of this corner. But on the energy issue, it's tough because Europe gets a lot of their energy from Russia as well. So we usually have to show up to those meetings alone. It's a tangled issue. Oh, go. Okay. So exports are declining, as you can see, to Russia from that region. But Armenia is still kind of chugging along. Okay, and here's something interesting too. Okay, so while you have the exports declining, right? Remittances are kind of holding steady, right? Remittances are in FDI, foreign direct investments, going up. Remittances, that's also an issue for these countries. They rely a lot on going into Russia and working and sending money home. Okay, now to China. Eastern European exports to China have been almost universally increasing in recent years. Modestly, but they're increasing because China's being very aggressive in courting them. Eastern European imports from China are generally much greater. Okay, we know what that means. So Tajikistan and Kyrgyz Republic are the most exposed to Chinese debt in the Belt and Road Initiative pipeline lending. Then Montenegro is also very vulnerable. They've done taken a lot of loans from China. And Belarus and now Bosnia and Herzegovina is getting in the game. Okay. So the exports to China, you see, have dropped from these countries. And the imports. Okay, I like this slide. I think it tells a good story. So you see how much debt that these countries are amassing from China. And this has been pretty rapid, okay? Okay, disinformation, really quickly. So you have the predatory lending on one hand. Now you have the disinformation campaigns. So the top 25 recipients of foreign government dissemination, false information, has a disproportionate number of countries in the Eastern European region. And this may suggest a very active role on the part of Russia as the perpetrator. I don't know why we just don't say it's Russia, but there you go. So interestingly, the spread of false information within borders from foreign governments, Latvia, Estonia, Hungary, Bulgaria, and Slovakia, and Georgia and Ukraine. Some of the highest cybersecurity capacity resides among those perpetrators, such as Russia, China, and North Korea. But Latvia and Hungary, who are targets, they also have a high cybersecurity capacity. Okay, so social media can be used by average people to affect political change. And this is where we hone in as a possible counteraction against that malign influence. Okay? Here's the biggest victims of false information online. You see it's a lot of countries in Eastern Europe. And for people interested in other regions, you can see we have it in Pakistan, Angola, Dominican Republic, Qatar. Okay, so if we have a disinformation problem, then USAID naturally we want to work in the media space, which prior to probably 2016, we weren't really doing. We saw a need for it for sure. We saw a need for it, but we just didn't have the resources to do it. We do rely on Congress for our appropriations, and we rely on the national security strategy and the administration to set those priorities. So it was a real godsend in 2016 and 2017 when they came out and said, this is a priority. We have to counter Russian disinformation, Russian malign influence. And so we started to get greater financial resources to start tackling this problem. So maybe before in Eastern Europe, we'd have these very small media activities where we would send journalists to the US on 2-week tours and see how we do things in the US, to then ramping up whole standalone activities to work with journalists on, how to properly cite sources, where to get information from, and working with European counterparts who were familiar with countering Russian disinformation already, and doing a lot of media literacy activities throughout this region for the average person, learning when you see something online, does it pass the smell test, and giving them certain steps of what to look for when you're reading these sources. We tried to roll out a lot of alternative news sources in the Russian language. Unfortunately, and sometimes you're learning as you go, okay? And one thing we learned in Moldova was, yes, Russian speakers here are kind of beholden to that Russian message because they watch Russian media. However, I don't know if you guys have seen Russian media, but it is amazing. It's like Hollywood on steroids. It's quality programming. It is great, save for the disinformation. So they were blasting that into these countries. So, it was being dubbed over in Romanian. So people were, everyone was exposed to this. So we also learn as we go, right? If we decide, okay, it's not just these Russian speakers in the northern part of the country that has the highest concentration of Russian speakers. This is being broadcast. And, we have tried unsuccessfully, the U.S. government, to try to bring in U.S. shows dubbed into Romanian or Slovakian or Hungarian. Too expensive. We have to work with the private sector to do that, right? Hollywood's not going to give anything to us for free. I mean, even if they felt charitable, it would be too expensive, right? And Russia gives it away to these countries for pennies. Okay? So it's just blasting all the time on the airwaves. You can go on whatever you prefer, Netflix or Prime. I find a lot of stuff on Prime, Russian-produced movies, amazing historical dramas. And if you listen, or if you read the subtitles really closely, they mix in disinformation a lot, all the time. So they're good at it. And I just want to close with, so on the Chinese predatory lending, we work every day out in the field trying to convince our partners, that's great, you got this big new port in Karachi. Okay, but you didn't get any jobs from it? They brought in the Chinese to build it and engineers, and okay, all right. Well, how about, we work in all of these villages surrounding Karachi to get some clean water so your kids can actually show up for school and they're not sick all the time. And get some books for the teachers too. So then your kids go on and they're productive adults in your society and economy. And but it's tough. That's tough. But we're on the front lines and we're trying hard, and we do it in tandem with our military counterparts at all the COCOMs around the world. I'll leave it there. I want to leave more time for questions and things, but, oh, and USAID, we're doing massive hiring right now, so spread the word. I can provide you links for that. Massive hiring right now. Okay. That's all.
Well, ma'am, quick question. What does a day in the life of a USAID Foreign Service Officer look like as you go to implement U.S. national policy abroad?
Yeah, that's a great question. So well, this is how I would start my day. Just talking to a colleague last night about it. You really want to be in tune with the local news, whether it's slanted or not. You need to be in tune with those. In my last post in Moldova, I tried to listen a lot to both the Romanian language news and the Russian language news, because you would get two very different takes on what was going on that day. Be aware of whose company owns those news sources. That's huge. You need to be aware what slant it's coming from. And like it or not, that's what's being reported, right? That's what people are hearing. So you can't spend all your time arguing like, well, that's not true. Well, okay, this is what people are hearing today. Okay. And then very quickly, when I walk in the office, I want to make the rounds, and I want to talk to my local coworkers. They are the backbone of our agency. Okay, they are the majority of employees in our agency. And because they're going to tell me something you're not going to hear on the news. They just went out to see a project, and they can say, hey, you know what? I was out at this well we're building the other day for that region of municipalities we're helping, and I heard the mayor talking that the shipment wasn't going to come in soon because they put in the order too late. That's going to be really embarrassing when the ambassador thinks he's going there next week to cut the ribbon on it. And so very quickly, before that gets on the news, you need to go and alert somebody in the ambassador's office. Hey, there's a snag. I'm going to get out there today and figure out what's going on so we can make that event happen next week or not, sir, ma'am. Right? So then I'm going to take a 3 or 4 hour trip out to this village to see, surprise visit, right? We do a lot of surprise visits, right? Because they're dealing with U.S. taxpayer money. So I want to know what's going on. Right? So a lot of times what you need to do is do surprise visits. So I'm going to go out there and, hey, mayor, let's go get coffee. And if I don't speak the language, bring an interpreter. Sit down, see what's going on. Okay, there's no getting around it. That well is going to be delayed. Okay, because you're dealing with countries that, they don't have a lot of resources at their disposal in the first place. Right? So sometimes things aren't going to move at the pace you want them to move. So then we just go back and we try to communicate it to the ambassador, like, well, this is positive because now you can move up your event with the women entrepreneurs for next week. And, it was kind of weird if you didn't accept their invitation, so now you can do that. So then you're back in the office. It's probably 5 p.m. by that time. And you have, probably like 10 requests from auditors. We get audited all the time. Congress, and because of the time difference, you need to respond tonight, so they have it in the morning. Some budget people back in Washington saying, hey, if we took away $50 million from your budget, what would you do? You have to always do these, cost-benefit analysis, like, okay, so you have this $50 million well project coming up. If we had to take that away and give it to the emergency in the Philippines, what foreign policy objective would suffer? So then we have to sit there and be like, oh my God, children would die, and they blame the Americans, and hope that someone has a heart that's reading it, right? And so while we're doing all this, right, we have these long-term activities, long-term vision. You saw, like, we're working on these media, we were doing some media stuff, but definitely doing some economic growth stuff to counter Russian influence. Over a decade ago, we were starting that kind of stuff. So we have all of these things going on for very long periods of time. So say you have this 5-year strategy, well, guess what? At a certain point, you got to start the new strategy process over, right? So we're in this constant mode of implementing our current strategy, adjusting for political upheaval. I wanted to spend $10 million to help, Doctors Without Borders, but now I really need to shut down that activity and ramp up our cybersecurity initiative with the local ministries in this country because they're under attack constantly, and that's not helpful because they're going to start reading the information we're giving them, It's a constant, you're implementing this long term, then you're saying, okay, well, it's going to take us a year to do all the studies for the next strategy, so let's start building up our next strategy. And now, again, I love this about our agency now and about this administration that's allowing us to do it. And you can go online, it's really, really neat. Journey to Self-Reliance. It's a whole culture shift, right? See, I was locked into, we're doing these strategies, we're doing this, we're doing that. We're talking to government ministries, we're talking to the local citizens, we're talking to our government, taking direction from our government. But now we have this whole cultural shift that's amazing where we're like, hey, wait a second. So, Macedonia, what's it gonna take for you to stop needing funding in this area? Let's talk, right? We don't just take their word for it, right? We're gonna have some evaluations done. We're gonna talk to people in civil society. We're gonna talk to our own intelligence experts, our own government experts, our people at the embassy. So now we have this great rubric to start out with. Wait, stop. What's it gonna take for you to withstand Russian economic pressure as a country? Let's start from there. What's it gonna take for you to withstand predatory Chinese lending practices as a country, Vietnam? What's it gonna take?
On that same topic, I thought that was the intent behind the Millennium Challenge Fund. So was that not successful, or?
Well, they are a different animal. So Millennium Challenge Corporation, they came into being during Bush 2, right? And they weren't completely happy with how quickly USAID was able to move because, again, all those activities in Moldova for that decade, people are probably wondering, what are you doing, right? And maybe we weren't able to effectively communicate, what are we doing, right? So the Bush administration was like, enough. I'm gonna make a whole new agency and we're gonna do this right. We're gonna get this development thing right. And we're gonna say, put heavy, heavy conditions on it. So USAID missions, we have a lot of constituencies in Congress and what we call the Beltway Bandits, the corporations and NGOs that do business and get our contracts. So we have a pretty strong constituency to constantly be providing aid to these different countries for our national security interests, right? It's not like these countries come and say, we need this, and we say, oh yes. No, it's, we would like to make you a better ally, and here's what we can offer, right? So they said, we're gonna fix this. And Millennium Challenge Corporation has done a lot of great things. They're just a different kind of animal than USAID. They come in with heavy, heavy, heavy conditions and say, okay, you must have this score on the World Bank Corruption Index to even start a program with us. And during our 4-year program with you, you've got to bring that score down or you're cut off. So you'll often find where USAID has a mission, there will be some Millennium Challenge Corporation activities going on as well. They built a whole new highway in Moldova, but then their corruption numbers just really went off the charts. And we just had to say, no, not we, but the US government, no, we can't do this with you any longer, no. So what is the difference? Ro and I have been finding various little aid agencies around too. What's the one you found? There's also African Development Agency. It's a U.S. agency that provides foreign aid to some countries in Africa. But we're the lead.
I'll just offer one public announcement. I'm the state representative for the U.S. Global Leadership Corporation. I don't know if you're familiar with the coalition. That coalition is made up, there's a veteran community for that. And that coalition is specifically for advocating for the U.S. foreign assistance budget. They do amazing work, and I like what you were talking about, having to answer those questions. I think that probably 50% of those questions get knocked off because of the lobbying that they do with Congress, and they do. But anyway, like 200 of the last 205 3- and 4-star generals and admirals who retired are part of the leadership board. And I just highly recommend any of you that are interested in that to take a look at the website. As I mentioned, there's a veterans group on there, and they love to get people involved. If you're in uniform, you probably might not be able to because it is advocating, but other than that, if you're outside, I'd strongly recommend it.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. So I failed to say when we're back at the mission from 5 to 10 p.m. responding to those requests, this is why contractors are so important, right? They're out doing these activities we've asked them to do. So work is still going on, right? It's still going on. We're still, building schools, training journalists, training judges, and doing economic growth activities, helping high-value agriculture chains, things like that.
So, you talked a little bit about the strategy in this culture shift, and I'm familiar with how USAID integrates into some of the DoD planning at the regional level with the combatant commands. But I'm interested in how does DoD, where's the integration and the synchronization for some of these larger strategies like USAID's rolling out?
That's a wonderful question. So, of course, we're at all the COCOM. So that slide deck I showed you in the middle with, DOD helping the interagency with our security interests. So at COCOMs, we have reps at all COCOMs that, when DOD says, here's what we're trying to do out here, USAID, State Department, other agencies come in and say, okay, here's where we fit into that. So that's for the whole region, right? Unfortunately, some of our regions don't line up really. And then if you go below that at the embassy level, we have a defense attaché at our embassies. So the defense attaché works with the ambassador on, what are our common areas of interest here. And again, USAID will step in and say, okay, here's where we can help out. Here's our expertise in moving the ball forward on that issue. And then when you get to that project level, that's interesting because if you, really talk to your defense attaché right out of the gate as the USAID representative and go forth with that team attitude, and the ambassador sets that tone of working together. I've had some really good experiences where while we might not have the same activity, we might say, okay, here's a region of the country we really need to focus in on because it's rife with Russian propaganda and it's causing problems for our relationships in this country. And so the defense attaché say, well, here's what we're doing, and here's the groups we're doing it with. And USA would say, okay, here's what we're doing. And wow, looks like we got 100% of that area covered with various kind of activities to dissuade them from these news bites they're hearing, or to get these disenfranchised youth into the formal economy. And because our money is used in different ways because of congressional authorities, some people think that makes it difficult for us to cooperate. I actually think it makes it easier because then I could say, well, you can only spend your money here, but I can spend money here. USAID, we can't spend money on training security forces. I wouldn't go and work with the military on something in a different country. So when we're having problems with some cybersecurity issues in Moldova, again, it was affecting a USAID program because we had a computer program that tracked judicial decisions, judicial assignments, judicial vacation days, a host of information, and we front-faced it to Moldovan citizens so they could see, oh, that's weird. That judge keeps getting cases by that oligarch and ruling in his favor. How does he does he ever take vacation? Or, oh, that's weird. That judge was supposed to get that case, but I can see it was reassigned 10 times until it got back to that judge, right? Well, we had a cybersecurity issue with that project, as you can imagine. And it was one thing for USAID to go in and talk to the IT ministry about it, but really the Ministry of the Interior handled it. We couldn't host even a lunch to talk to them about these things. So we got our defense attaché to spend his money to bring in military and intelligence folks to talk to us. And then we brought in our partners at the IT ministry, and we said, let's figure out what's going on and what can we do here to stop the shenanigans, because we're going to pull the plug altogether if this keeps going on. And again, USAID, we don't have that gravitas with the Ministry of the Interior. I could not have walked in there as a USAID rep and said, oh, come on, Minister of the Interior, you're bad, right? No, but the defense attaché, who's got a lot of leverage with that minister, he can say, hey, knock it off. This is gonna interfere with our relationship. So, does that make sense?
Can I follow?
Yep.
I appreciate the sort of clarification. It sounds like there's a lot of cooperation in the regional, levels, but at the strategic levels, so like all the global campaign work that like the Joint Staff is doing, is there some sort of synchronization at that level between like USAID strategic policy decisions and sort of DoD, or does it start to kind of
we
separate
come
a little bit more at that level?
Yeah, we come in as needed at those levels, because we don't have a cabinet level secretary, right? We're brought in as our expertise demands. So the Secretary of State would go, yeah.
Does it work in reverse, where as USAID is developing their strategy, someone just requested someone from like the Department of Defense, assign someone to kind of help, I don't know, I guess facilitate some of that synchronization? Or?
Yeah, we have people in the Pentagon. Okay. We have people, all the COCOMs. We have people at most of the schoolhouses. But yeah, we have people in the Pentagon. And we have military folks at USAID on fellowship. Yeah, which has been really wonderful, especially in Eastern Europe and Central Asia. They've done some great things for us, provided some insight and manage actual programs for us, which has been great. Yep. Okay. Well, that's all. I know I did a very wide brush. So if you have more specific questions, I'd be happy to answer them. That's all I have. Thank you very much. So much for your support.
After the Simon Center.
You got to do this.
Touch your hand, yeah. Simon Center and our partner CGSS, thank you very much. We appreciate the presentation.
Thank you, Rod.
Once again, next presentation is scheduled for 6 April, but that's kind of in a hold for now. So watch our advertising materials, and we hope to see you at our next session. Thank you very much.